What's up, my friends? It is Danny Gallows, of course, who'd you think it was, and welcome back to the next installment of my episode-by-episode review of Age of Resistance. And yeah, guys, sorry about the one-day delay there. Still trying to balance out a brand new work schedule, so just bear with me. The videos will be up on either Tuesdays or Wednesdays, but hopefully Tuesdays. But anyway, today we're moving on to one of our last episodes of the show, Episode 8, Prophets Don't Know Everything. Except when they do. So now at this point we have entered the time period that is post-Battle of Stone in the Wood, and we have a great meaningful scene with Agra here as she's sitting in the middle of this fresh battlefield kind of contemplating the situation, and as this injured thredder crawls up to her, she heals the thredder, the scar of the thredder, and she recites my favorite quote in the entire show, "Minds forget, but scars remember." And it's so deep and it's so true. And it's so meaningful too, and it means so much because she's, it's symbolic. She's sitting in the middle of this freshly scarred battlefield, kind of reflecting on the situation, giving all this knowledge and wisdom through this amazing quote. And then Seladon shows up, of course, to offer her assistance, right? Well, no, actually she's just there to tell Agra what a mean, evil witch she is and how wrong she is. At which point Agra rightly dismisses her, but not before popping her eye out, dropping it in Seladon's dress, so she can do a little spying. And after this, we get to see the beginnings of another one of the Chamberlain's secret, devious plans, as he agrees to set the Grunaks free if they'll just swap the general's essence out with glowing milk and some water, right? And I love this because this is the essence, no pun intended, of the Chamberlain, right? He says, you know what, Grunaks? I'll set you free. I promise you guys freedom if you do this one simple task for me. You guys aren't going to get caught, don't worry about it. Just, and every time you bring that essence tray out, just swap the general's essence out with water. And the general will grow weaker over time, and then he can regain control. And I love this because, it's just so Chamberlain, It's like, if he can't get you with his snaked tongue, then he'll just poison your ass. And it's a perfect example of someone who takes control very, very slowly and methodically from the shadows instead of just using brute force like you would see with the general. That is everything great about the Chamberlain. And now we finally return to our heroes and their quest to find the Dual Glaive, which very interestingly begins with discovering a secret path that leads out from the Circle of the Suns and down into who knows where. But they do mention the Breath of Thra, which is very, very interesting because the Breath of Thra usually runs through the caves of Grot. It is literally the air of Thra that is rising from the core of the planet, the hot air rising from the core of the planet and blowing through all of the cave systems. So after some comedic scenes with Rian and Deet kind of traveling through these passageways, they finally reach the precipice of this kind of giant mouth of this cave that's leading down into the center of the earth. And of course, Deet can fly, but Rian can't. So she scoops him up, and they jump down into the Breath of Thra, carried off to, well, who knows where, but I'll tell you one thing, I would not want to be Rian in that situation. So, after Skektek drains some more Gelfling of their essence at the Crystal Castle, and by the way, I have one of those bottles right here, saved one for myself. It's just too delicious, man. Oh, so good. Tastes like Glacier Freeze. He wheels the tray of essence out to the Skeksis Council, the Skeksis Gathering, I guess you could say, and they all take their bottles and start consuming and having their joyous celebration, celebrating their lives and their eternity and their immortal lives, and slurping and gulping, and it's just an essence celebration. It's a beautiful thing, a beautiful Skeksis ceremony. Even Skekzok, the ritual master, says that he's going to invent a brand new ritual just for the consumption of essence, which is a wonderful thought, truly wonderful thought. But then, poor Seladon shows up. And I love this scene. It's another one of my favorite scenes of the show because, Seladon shows up kind of dressed like a Skeksis, and they can see that. They can see that she's dressed like a Skeksis. She's got her dark lipstick and makeup and the little crown on and the dress, with her wings all placed kind of like, almost like Skeksis armor. It looks like Skeksis armor. And she comes out and presents herself to the Skeksis. And it's a very, very important scene in the show because, not only does she get the rug completely taken out from under her feet, because she's expecting that her loyalty is going to win the Skeksis' affection, I guess, but instead she finds the exact opposite. She finds Skekso, the Emperor, an unmerciful lord, and we all know that he's an unmerciful lord, but she doesn't know this. She expects something completely opposite to happen. And it's such a great scene because, like, she's just getting what she deserves. She's getting humbled and humiliated at the same time, but also, Seladon took the wrong path, man, and now she's paying for it. This is what is going to happen. Now you see the truth. Now you see what the Skeksis really are. And it's also a very frightening and disturbing scene too, because they basically do the same thing that they did to the Chamberlain, right, in the original movie. Is they all, just every single one of them, just like vultures, just converge on her and just start ripping and tearing her costume off, and they're clawing her face and drawing blood, and and then they take her by the hair and they drag her away across the floor to be drained. And after that scene, you're just kind of sitting there like, you get what you deserve, Seladon. Own it. So as we return to the caves of Grot, Deet and Rianne quickly discover that the Arathim are there, and they're attacking and they're spreading their threaders everywhere. And unfortunately, one of the threaders has also taken control of Deet's little brother, Bobbin. And looking back on it, it's a pretty, it provides even more terrifying moments, right? I mean, that voice he's making and kind of his body language and how he acts, it's kind of, it sends shivers down your spine. It's really, really creepy and well done. But we also forget that the Nurlocks are down there, and they are infected by the Darkening. And the Nurlocks are also going around eating pretty much everything in sight, including the Arathim, so it's just complete chaos. And Deet and Rianne are trying to figure out what to do in the middle of all this chaos, but hopefully a solution will present itself, and I'll stop stuttering. Meanwhile, back at the Crystal Castle, the great hunter Skekmal has finally returned, and he's barely alive at this point, but with his last reserves of energy, the very last drops of energy he has, he stumbles his way into the middle of the throne room and collapses on the floor, just completely spent. Awful to see Skekmal like that, because he's such an awesome, powerful warrior, but, so is Urvad the archer. He filled him with arrows. He's pretty much dying at this point. And as he's being examined by Skektek confirms this. He's doing a full examination, and he's basically, expiration is imminent at this point. He's going to die. At which point Skekso orders all of the essence available, basically to be given to Skekmal to try to save his life. But at least Skekmal did one last good deed before he slips into that coma, and that is returning Brea, which they discover in the cage. I don't know why she's making noise. Well, I suppose it wouldn't have mattered anyway. They would have discovered that she was in there eventually, but she's in there making noise, and then all of a sudden she pops out and there she is, at which point she gets taken away to the jail cell. And following that is a another meaningful scene, another very important scene, which puts, just the craziness, the insanity of Seladon on full display as Brea discovers that she's in there. And as they're having this conversation and exchanging thoughts and wisdom about the situation, Seladon just can't let it go. Even at this point, even after everything that has happened, she still blames her mother, and she still blames Brea, instead of blaming herself. And it just shows how insane Seladon is, and can't save them all. Now, as we return to the caves of Grot, Deet and Rianne are being led into this big underground chamber by her little brother Bobbin, and there she meets both of her fathers and Madra Argot as well, who have unfortunately all also been overtaken by the Threaders. And as they start having discussions with the Ascendancy, the collection of Arathim, of course, they have this kind of realization that the Skeksis must have led them down here because they knew that the caves of Grot were infected by the Darkening. And Rianne tries to get them to see this. Don't you guys understand? The Skeksis sent you here to die, right? Well, so what's the solution after this? Well, the solution after this is to help us. Why don't you guys team up with us? Team up with the Gelfling against the Skeksis, because, obviously the Skeksis evil is spreading all over Thra, and now they're manipulating you guys. Now they're manipulating the Arathim. So team up with us, and then we'll have a huge army to battle the Skeksis. And yes, I admit, this is probably one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever seen, right? Because, things during that one scene, it's just one single scene. But in that one scene, there's like so many turnarounds. All of a sudden, the Arathim are working for the Skeksis, and then bam, in the blink of an eye, they're working for the Gelfling. And yeah, I'll admit, it was a little bit too quick, but hey, the show is only 10 episodes long, so you gotta keep the exposition going, you gotta keep the story moving. And now this creates an incredibly fascinating situation, because now the Gelfling are not alone, right? Now the Gelfling have a giant spider army at their call. Now they're a full fighting force. Now they can actually stand up against the Skeksis. And as Agra's little threader comes back to deliver her the news about this kind of, this joining together of forces, now she sees that everything that was foretold, all the good that was foretold, is actually happening. All of the creatures in Thra and all of the different forces and life forces of Thra are now connecting, and they are uniting together as one against the Skeksis, which is exactly the path that all of these beings in Thra are supposed to take to stand up against this evil. And this kind of, it gives her a sense of happiness, a sense of joy in a lot of ways, because now she knows that her work is being completed. The path that she set out on is being realized. Everyone is uniting, everyone is coming together, and finally, hopefully, the reign of the Skeksis is coming to an end. Now, following this, we are gifted with another one of the most powerful, meaningful scenes in the entire show, and that is the gift of the sanctuary tree. As they are standing there in the underground chamber in front of the sanctuary tree, they see that the tree is not only fighting off the darkening, doing its best to fight off this evil disease that is the darkening, but it also starts getting eaten alive by the infected Nurlocs. And it's such a sad scene, because we see this ancient, powerful, mystical being that is the sanctuary tree, that is obviously very much alive, being eaten alive by its own creatures after fighting off the darkening for so long, after fighting all of these trine for, endless trine. Who knows how long this tree has been fighting off the darkening. It doesn't have a happy ending. It starts getting eaten alive by its own creatures, and as a last act of desperation, whether it's a blessing or a curse, he does not know, but the tree brings its special flower forward and touches Deet's hand and imbues her with all of the sanctuary tree's power. And it's such an amazing scene, such an awesome scene. And here, Deet also receives a vision, which includes these very strange scenes, like Deet sitting on the Emperor's throne, and we see Brea carrying baby Kira, and we do know that that is baby Kira being carried through the forest, escaping from the Gartham. And after receiving this vision, she kind of collapses and faints, obviously, because she's received all this power. But with this power, not only does this vision kind of take over her mind and kind of give her this sense of belonging and wisdom and knowing that she has a great task to do, but this tree has also given her special powers. As a Nurloc approaches to eat them, and she reaches out her hand and says, let me heal you, and she literally heals this Nurloc. So now Deet has magical powers somehow. We don't really know what's going to play out. Well, some of us who have watched the entire show know what's about to play out, but Deet has obviously been given some kind of superpowers, what are essentially superpowers, which is, again, a very cool addition to see in the Dark Crystal universe, because magical powers like that weren't really explored in the Dark Crystal, but now in Age of Resistance they're opening up this world kind of to show us all these magical abilities that people have, and I just love it. I think it's great. So in terms of what I relearned watching this particular episode, the very last scene in this episode where Rian is carrying Deet up the side of the cliff, he's climbing up the side of the cliff and Deet is on his back, that was the moment in this show where I realized that I was watching something truly special. And every time I see that scene, I always remember the first time I watched it. And it's really strange because it's such an insignificant scene. It's just this basic scene of Rian climbing up the cliff and, Deet's hanging off his back. But the way that scene is shot, where you can hear Deet breathing, and she has this blurred vision, and we kind of get these strange kind of almost abstract artistic shots of Rian kind of turning his head back and looking at her and climbing up the cliff, and Deet's heavy breathing as she's kind of looking up and around, and her vision is all blurred. And I remember watching that scene and just being like, wow, like this show is incredible. Because again, I say it a lot, the humanization of puppets, right? They make them appear so human. Puppets are used for comedy. They're just, like Sesame Street and Fraggle Rock and stuff like that. We're just supposed to have fun with puppets, right? But here was a TV show who was taking puppets very, very seriously and humanizing their characters and making them appear so visceral and so real. And I just always remember that one little scene at the end of this episode with Rian and Deet, and just thinking, man, this is a special show. Like, look at that directing. Look at how they directed that scene. Look at how they set up that little scene. Look at how they made them feel, they made them appear, and how it makes you feel, right? It's just so incredible the way that it was executed, and how just how real everything feels. I can't overstate that enough. Alright my friends, well that's enough blathering from yours truly for right now. Now comes the best part of the video where I turn it over to all of you. So go ahead and leave all of your thoughts and opinions down below in the Great White Void. Favorite scenes, favorite moment, favorite characters, favorite anything you want. Leave it all down there below in the Great White Void. And as always, until next we meet guys, take care, and I'll see you guys back here for the next review on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Just kidding. It'll be on Tuesday or Wednesday. Trying to discipline myself. Oh! I don't know what that was. It's hot in here. Time for me to end the video. See you guys back here very soon. For Thra, for Jim, forever.